Hey everyone, it's pop quiz time. What is a definition for truth? Do you remember? Truth is that which has fidelity to an original or to a standard. Please hang on to that and choose the right original or standard as the foundation for your life. If you use the above approach with a person who doesn't believe in God, you're very likely to hear comments like, well, science is my foundation, or science proves that there's a God, so let's deal with it. In order to do that, we have to define science. According to a Merriam-Webster medical dictionary, science is knowledge or a system of knowledge covering general truths or the operation of general laws, especially as obtained and tested through the scientific method. That's easy enough. Science is knowledge. Let's go to an 1828 Webster's dictionary and compare today's definition with one from back then. In a general sense, knowledge or certain knowledge, the comprehension or understanding of truth or facts by the mind. The science of God must be perfect. They look pretty similar with one tiny exception. Did you catch the reference to God? And please notice that it's a capital G God, not the lowercase g. Why does that matter? Simple. Let's take a look at how various textbooks define how science works. What does it mean to say that an approach is scientific? The goal of science is to investigate and understand the natural world, to explain events in the natural world, and to use those explanations to make useful predictions. Science deals only with the natural world. Science is an organized way of using evidence to learn about the natural world. Did you notice something new has been added? Let's look at another textbook. The goal of science is to explain natural phenomena. Scientists ask questions about natural events and then work to answer those questions through experiments and examination. Scientists expect that nature is predictable, which means that the future behavior of natural forces can be anticipated. Here's one more. In science, explanations must be based on naturally occurring phenomena. Natural causes are, in principle, reproducible and therefore can be checked independently by others. If explanations are based upon purported forces that are outside of nature, scientists have no way of either confirming or disproving those explanations. Where did all this natural events, natural causes, and natural whatever come from? That's not in either the 1828 Merriam-Webster dictionary or the modern-day Merriam-Webster medical dictionary definitions. No, it's been added for one simple reason, and that's to try and remove a supernatural force, and that supernatural force is God. The bottom line is that the word science comes from a Latin verb which means to know. So science is simply a way of knowing. But how is that knowledge obtained? Notice the dictionary definition addresses that question. It tells us that knowledge gained through the scientific method. So let's define the scientific method. And we'll do that by going back to the dictionary. Principles and procedures for the systematic pursuit of knowledge involving the recognition and formulation of a problem, the collection of data through observation and experiment, and the formulation and testing of hypotheses. To keep it simple, the scientific method consists of a series of 7 steps. Those steps: observation, question, hypothesis, prediction, and experiment. Now, if the experiment doesn't support the hypothesis, revise it. Come up with a new one. If it does support it, make additional predictions and test those. Let me give you a practical application to this process. A while back, I was speaking in Missouri. I set my computer and projector up. I plugged them into the same electrical outlet and tested everything. It worked great. About an hour later, after the worship was all done, I got up to speak, and while the projector was working, my computer wasn't. Observation. Number 1, the projector was working. Number 2, the computer was not working. Number 3, they were both plugged in to the same outlet. So here was my question. 1, what in the world is going on? I'm very uncomfortable standing in front of people without my computer. Number 2, what did I do to be put into this position? Number 3, where's my mommy? My hypothesis. I had options. Number 1, my computer's fried. Number 2, there's no electricity. Number 3, God is punishing me. My prediction, depending on the chosen option: 1, have a heart attack, go to the hospital so I don't have to stand up here without my computer. Number 2, plug into a different outlet, see if it works. Number 3, repent and pray that God will make it work. Here was my experiment, depending on the chosen option. 1, I couldn't manifest a heart attack, so I didn't try that. Number 2, ran an extension cord and plugged into it. Number 3, prayed like crazy. Outcome, depending on the chosen option: 1, it didn't happen, thankfully. 2, the computer turned on. 3, It's always a good thing to pray, so I was blessed either way on that one. Yes, that may be a silly example, but the scientific method is based on observational, empirical, measurable evidence that's been gathered and can be tested. Take a look at how one biology textbook puts it. Science requires repeatable observations and testable hypotheses. One challenge that you will face is those that don't believe in God. They'll say, if you don't believe in evolution, then you shouldn't take medicine, you shouldn't fly in an airplane, or you shouldn't use a computer. And that's because, according to them, belief in evolution is how we were able to create all of those things. That's simply not true. Using the scientific method, which came from Bible-believing Christians, is how man was able to create those, as well as many other amazing advances in technology. Now, I have to admit that if there were only PCs and no Macs, well, evolution may have had a chance. I'm joking. But the fact that we have Macs proves there's no chance for evolution. Again, I'm joking. But I'm not joking when I say that science is incapable of proving that something doesn't exist. Science can prove there is an existence of certain things, but it cannot prove that they don't exist. Did you know that the father of the scientific method was Galileo Galilei? Interestingly enough, he was an ardent Christian who stood firm on the Word of God. Another two scientists that had very big impacts on the scientific method were Sir Francis Bacon and Sir Isaac Newton. Sir Isaac Newton wrote more on the Bible than he did on science. Both of these men were ardent Christians. Or did you know that the reason we are doing space exploration today is because of Dr. Wernher von Braun? Dr. von Braun was a real rocket scientist and is called the father of our space program. Take a look at what Dr. von Braun said about the scientific method. Ultimately raises the question of a designer. The scientific method does not allow us to exclude data which lead to the conclusion that the universe, life, and man are based on design. To be forced to believe that everything in the universe happened by chance would violate the very objectivity of science itself. Certainly there are those who argue that the universe evolved out of a random process, but what random process could produce the brain of a man or the system of the human eye? Please don't be deceived into thinking that just because you don't believe that gas using slow gradual processes over millions of years turned itself into everything that you can see in science and see in the world around us, nothing could be further from the truth. When you look at the founding fathers of most branches of science today, you're going to find Bible believers. To fully understand why there are such different explanations for the world that we live in is to understand that we don't have an evidence problem. What we have is a spiritual problem. As I've said repeatedly, our worldview impacts our interpretation. Let me show you a clip from the movie Expelled, which I'm going to strongly suggest that you watch before the next class.
If you have two distinguished scientists, and in fact you can range many more on each side, as you know, saying exactly opposite things, that's telling me that the conflict is not between science and belief in God. Otherwise you'd expect all scientists to be atheists. But it's a worldview conflict. It's between scientists who have different worldviews.
You've got two competing explanations of the evidence. One says design, one says undirected processes. Both of them have larger philosophical or religious or anti-religious implications. So you can't say that one of those two theories is scientific and the other is unscientific simply because they have implications. Both have implications.
People who tell you, for example, that science tells you all you need to know about the world, or that science tells you that religion is all wrong, or science tells you that there is no God, those people aren't telling you scientific things. They are saying metaphysical things, and they have to defend their positions for metaphysical reasons.
What is being presented to the public is, first comes the science, and then comes the worldview. I would want to argue that that may not be the case, that it may actually be the other way around, that the worldview comes first and is influencing the interpretation of science.
Take a look at this illustration. Take dinosaurs, for instance, which we'll talk about in later classes. Both Christians and non-Christians have the same fossil evidence. The reason we come to two totally different interpretations is because of our starting point, what we think about the past or our worldview. Next time, we are going to break down science one step further. Understanding the meaning of words is crucial to preparing us to officially evaluate messages. May God continue to richly bless your studies. Stick in there. Don't give up. Keep digging, and we'll see you next time. Until then, stay bold.